Sara, please join us.
Thank you. Seriously, Twitter is the best, and I really mean it, and this is one of the most exciting things that's happened to me because of that social media. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Genuinely, I am incredibly impressed at what the United Way of King County has put together, what I've already seen from the program, and what's really possible. I do want to tell you that we now know, and there's, I don't think, any uncertainty that the reasons that students aren't getting through college at this point have so much to do with life and logistics. We've talked for a long time about not being college ready, not having the right courses from high school and all of those sort of things. But I mean, look at this student up here, right? What she's saying, I wanted to be in school and I wanted to finish and I want that for my family and I want that for my community. I have found those exact same thoughts in literally thousands of student interviews done all over the country. And the data are beginning to really prove out the fact that when students are dropping out of college, they're actually dropping out already making pretty good grades. So it's not like they don't have the ambition and they're not putting in the time and the effort, but they don't have their basic needs met. Now, if we go back even, say, 10 years, and you looked across the country, you would not see discussion of these issues. Okay, you will not find studies on food insecurity or housing insecurity much to demonstrate a problem such that a solution like this would emerge because we weren't asking the questions. But once we started to ask the questions, and I have to be honest with you, the reason we started asking the questions is because students started to bring up the issue. They started to talk about it. Once we started to ask the questions, the data have become incredibly consistent. Across space and time, I don't care if I'm standing here or I'm in Los Angeles or frankly, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, where I spent 12 years, okay, or Philadelphia, we're seeing as many as about half of the nation's community college students dealing with food and or housing insecurity at any given moment. In fact, of course, across their college careers, it suggests that maybe only about 30% of them get to go through college without having these experiences. My team developed something called the Real College Survey. And we call it Real College because we feel like we've got to help people understand that what's happening today in college is just not what was happening yesterday. Now, I'm not saying that there was never a person who didn't have enough to eat years and years ago, but the numbers of people who are being affected now are heightened because of the new economics of college. And I think many of you in the room know about those things. It's not just about the price of tuition. I mean, this is actually a pretty remarkable place because you're also in Washington State where you just passed some incredibly cool legislation. In fact, I've called it some of the most progressive state free college legislation in the country. But the fact is that tuition is not the majority of the cost of attendance. It's things like rising rent and food prices and transportation and medical and all that other stuff. And those things go up even when financial aid does not increase. But it's also about what's happening to families. So very few people, when they're talking about paying for college, acknowledge the decimation of African-American wealth in this country that happened over the last 10 or so years. The real trick to being able to help your student or help yourself get through college, to survive when you have, an unexpected need for $200 or $300, we know the trick. It's called having a wealthy family. That's what buffers you. And if you don't have that, you end up turning and saying help, and nobody responds. We also know that there have been major changes to the social safety net, such as it is, such as what remains, right? So I often get people who come up and say, look, when I was hungry in college in the 70s, I went on food stamps. Why can't these students just get on food stamps? I don't know how many of you read the authorizing legislation for SNAP. It does not exactly clearly communicate that, yes, many students can get access to food stamps. It's actually written in a way that would seem to deter it. And so in January, for the first time ever, the federal government acknowledged that students are not getting access to SNAP and it's leading to campus hunger. And they released a report. It referred to 31 studies, 4 of which were done by my team. And they said, look, scientists have basically shown this is the case. And when we reached out across the country to the agencies that are supposed to be helping people connect to SNAP, we can see it's not happening. Now, Lauren doesn't know this, but any minute now, Elizabeth Warren is about to drop new legislation to address campus hunger by doing SNAP reform. And it will be the third bill released from Congress in the last 2 weeks alone to try to address those problems. And there will be 3 more pieces of congressional legislation coming in the next couple weeks. But even as they try to change the rules, somebody actually has to do the work. So here's what we know locally. My team has had the opportunity to do surveys in several Seattle area colleges. We are not the ones who led the UW study. There was a recent UW report, and you can take a look at what they found as well. I would argue that their findings echo ours in many, many ways. We're going to be doing the Washington State Board of Community and Technical Colleges survey this fall. We found that at the time of the survey, which was last fall, administered primarily around October or November, kind of intentionally after the school year started, we found that 42% of the students surveyed, 42% had experienced food insecurity in the last 30 days. That's using the USDA measure, where we only call somebody food insecure or if they're at the low or very lowest levels. We further found that 59% of them had experienced housing insecurity in the last year, and that 19% of them had experienced homelessness in the last year. Now, what does that look like for a student? I want to tell you a quick story, because I'm still a little bit astonished that this happened. But yesterday I flew in because I was speaking at something called the Society for College and University Planners, people who make design plans for what college campuses will look like. And I got off a cross-country flight, and I thought it would be a good idea to go and get a blowout. Okay, for those of you who don't know, I found out on Twitter, people don't know what that is. I wanted somebody to fix my hair, okay? So I went down to a salon that's probably 10 minutes from here, sat down in the chair, and they always are very, nice and ask about you. And so the woman said, so why are you here? What brought you in all the way from Philadelphia? And I said, I'm here to do some work and raise some awareness around homeless college students. And usually the response is, what? Homeless college students? How can you be homeless and in college? I'm so used to it, right? Every Uber driver. How can that be? And instead she goes, good. Yeah, that's good. It's a really big issue. So I'm kind of like, huh? So I said, how do you know? And she said, I wrote a paper on it in college. And I said, really? When was that? Thinking it was like last year, right? Because it's getting a lot of attention. She said, no, that was 2012. She was a student at the community college in California, in Northern California, in 2012. And her English teacher said, you need to write a paper on something that you're passionate about, something that you care about. And she had friends who were homeless while they were in school. And so she decided, let me find out what there is about this, right? And what are the supportive programs? And she reached 2 conclusions. Number 1, there was no data. She said, we were basically invisible. These students, my friends, they were not there in the data. And she's right, because there had only been about 1, maybe 2 studies published at that point. Very hard to find. 2, she said, pretty much nobody was trying to help us. I couldn't find programs. And she said, so I wrote up the paper, and she said it was very frustrating to see all of those things. So it's kind of weird and amazing that you're sitting in my chair. And I said, yeah, it really is. I said, but I have to wonder, so you were trying to help your friends? And she said, yeah, and there's one more thing. She said, I turned in the paper, I got an A, and I dropped out of college. And I said, why? And she said, well, because I was living in a tent on the roof of my friend's parents' house, where I'd been for the whole year after I fled a domestic violence situation. She was homeless. She'd been homeless. She didn't use the word. Most students don't use the word. But she herself was going through it, and it drove her right out. And it's been years later, many years, about 5 years, and now she's here, cutting hair, finding that she has to work at least 2 jobs to make ends meet. A number of hours never adds up, and she desperately wants to go back to school. But she says, when I go into the local community college and we put the numbers together, it just doesn't make sense for me to miss work to do this. I just can't pay my bills if I do this. And that's when all of a sudden I realized that starting next fall, it'll be tuition free for her, right? And I told her about the new bill, and we connected, and she cried. She's going to go back. And the other reason that I was so excited was because I'm pretty darn sure there will be a benefits hub to help her. In fact, I think I know that. There will be a benefits hub to help her. And what that means, because there's no way I'm going to know her and not make her go, right, is that she can get access to help to get her on every possible program to help her make ends meet. And if there is an emergency, she has somebody to turn to. And there is somebody there this time when she goes to college who's saying, this is not okay for you to be going through this. And we see the point in helping you get a degree. That's amazing, right? Think about what that's going to teach her. Think about what that's going to teach her about how change happens in this country, right? And what that's going to teach her about what her community can do for her. So that's what's really possible here. We've known for quite a while now that it's important to connect people to all available resources while they're in college. We know that filling out the FAFSA is a horrible situation, and you're lucky if you get through it. But guess what? That's not the end of the story, right? You can fill out the FAFSA and still be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars short of what you actually need. So we have to connect people to other programs. And I love the nation's community colleges. I really, really do. I've spent my whole life in the public sector. But I gotta tell you, this doesn't feel quite in their mission. And more importantly, even when they do decide it's in their mission and they feel it, they don't have the resources to be just ponying up. And they're genuine about that because their budgets have been cut so severely on a per student basis over time that if we say to them, look, it pays off to do it, they're still going, yes, and we have to teach math. They don't have it. That's why community organizations like this one matter so much. Because if you can partner, then you can help to make it more possible for them. They bring the students, they help make things occur on the campus, they give you the space, they let you in, right? They do everything that they can do, and you come to the table and you assist. And the best part is that whenever I've seen that happen, once it starts, it doesn't stop. So I look for things that are viable, right? Programs that are viable, meaning like they actually understand the problems actually facing the students and the colleges. They don't try to pretend that like we're walking into Stanford here, right? We're not. It's a far cry. I look for things that are sustainable, right? That do not require forever philanthropic investment. At some point, it will become clear that the college really wins and the state really wins from programs like this. The ROI will become evident, and that will help to drive further investment. And the last part is I look for things that are effective. And that is hard. Let me give you a quick example. I'm in the middle of I think the second of 3 years of studying a program in Tacoma out of the Tacoma Housing Authority called the College Housing Assistance Program. How many of you have heard of it? Okay, it's awesome. Fabulous. The first day I met Michael Mira, I almost fell out of my chair. Seriously, I mean, how many people do you know are like, let's take those limited Section 8 housing vouchers and help community college students? Amazing. And he's expanding the program now. It's doing really well. But I also have to tell you that the students that he's serving who are homeless and near homeless have extremely low odds of retention and graduation. And what that means is that if we don't take seriously the prospect of evaluation, you're going to be looking at a program that you might say, look, 10% of them got a degree. And you might decide that they failed. And you'd be wrong. Because when we set up a proper comparison group of like people who don't get those services, you begin to see the differential that's occurring. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, my study has not yet seen that differential. It's too soon. But we're seeing emerging differentials in their chances of being employed. And the one that really gets me, their chances of having their children actually live with them. Let's talk about what higher ed can really do, right? Higher ed's not just about credentialing. Higher ed creates health benefits, right? It is possible that he's going to reduce the number of times these people ever see an emergency room or ever experience incarceration. Those are big returns. So we're going to do, and this again, thanks to Twitter, and also thanks to Arnold Ventures, which is a national foundation, we're going to get to do an evaluation here of this program. And one of the reasons I really wanted to was because you have a solid model, strong theory, and emerging evidence that this is already happening, that you can already have the elements in place, and it seems like it can be sustained and it can be scaled. And we're going to be pushing on scale, but we're also going to be taking our sort of hard-nosed empirical look to make sure it is having impact. And that is hard for programs. And to be honest, they have to be very, very brave. And it's clear that y'all are, which is great, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. And so I'm excited about what's coming, right? We're going to step in there. We've got a really great team of folks, including some who've been doing work here with your colleges for years, and so really know those players and know that setting. That's important because when something goes awry, we'll know, and everything, I mean, every program has something that goes awry. It wouldn't be a new thing. We're going to be able to distinguish between, the things that are happening really on the college side and the things that are happening on the United Way side and the things that happen in those interactions. There's a lot of capacity building to be done here. But I'm also really optimistic that at the end of the day, we're going to have in front of you a bar chart to go along with these quotes. And the bar is going to show you what happens with this program and what happens without it. And I suspect there's going to be a difference, and it will be a game changer. And there are United Ways all over the country. I got one in Philly I need to talk to. But I really want to march in and say, not only are these folks leading, but I suspect we'll be able to bring evidence. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah.